Hey guys and fellow whiskey lovers, welcome to Malt Mariner's Whiskey Roads. I am on the road again in Canada this time, and I'm hosted by...
So my name is Graeme Macaloney, Dr. Graeme Macaloney, the founder and Master Whisky Maker, all the way from Scotland, but here now in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, on the west coast or on the Pacific Ocean.
Great, and now we're gonna have a look at the Macaloneys Distillery. Let's go.
And then this is our distillery bar.
Ooh, beers, music and whiskey. All the best things. Macaloneys Distillery.
Yep. So maybe start off with my background, if that's
Yes.
okay. So originally born and bred in Scotland. At the end of high school, I had a summer job with the Black and White Whisky Factory. If you remember that old brand, the Black and White Whisky. And at that point, I was going to university, and inspired me to study fermentation at a Scottish university called Strathclyde University in Glasgow. Professor said I should upgrade my degree, so did a master's in biochemical engineering, and then ended up with a PhD in fermentation. I thought I was all set to work in the whiskey or beer industry. Applied for jobs and was promptly told I'm overqualified. So I ended up working in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals.
Okay.
And amazingly similar processes, in my opinion, as an engineer, making beer, making whiskey, making antibiotics, insulin, growth hormone, they're quite similar, believe it or not. Came out to Canada in 1989, working in biotechnology, lifetime whiskey connoisseur. And ultimately I was inspired to start up a distillery. Had no money, had to remortgage my house. We came here to Victoria because of the tourism. It's fantastic for tourism. And to raise money, I went across Canada to whiskey clubs, met ultimately 700 whiskey enthusiasts who all invested in this distillery.
Wow.
Right? And then recruited Dr. Jim Swan, the famous Scotch whisky expert. He worked previously with Cavallan, Kilchoman, Cotswolds, Milk and Honey, Virginia, etc. We were his second last project. So with a PhD in fermentation, I know enough to be dangerous. I know enough to surround myself with great expertise. So Jim Swan, part of it. Also, fortuitously, a master distiller from Diageo, Mike Nicholson, retired to Victoria. And Mike used to be the master distiller at Lagavulin, Kalila, Blair Athol, Glenkinchie. And he worked in about 17 Diageo distilleries as a distiller. Retired to Victoria, knocked on his door, coming out of retirement. Can you work with me? So I had a great team to design the distillery, to design the whiskey process. But at the end of the day, I'm the one that really kind of, formulated all of that. I'm the one that makes the whiskey on a go-forward basis. So my role here is the Master Whisky Maker. Yes, I'm originally the founder. I'm a very small part owner with 700 investors. But my key role now is the Master Whisky Maker. Okay, so we'll go on a tour then. Excuse me, please. And a couple of things really to show you outside to start off. We bring in the grain, it's basically pale malt, two-row barley, malted barley for the single malt whisky. It's Canadian barley. It's better than that rubbish European barley, by the way. We can talk about that later if you would like. But we bring that in bulk, both for the beer and for the pale malt, pale ale, IPA, and whiskey wash. It's all the same barley. This is the peat smoker, so some of our whiskies are peat smoked, some are just classic single malts with no peat, and then some are Irish triple distilled pot still style, right? So that means then that we're dealing with single malt barley that we peat smoke here at the distillery, but we also bring in farmers barley, unmalted, and use that for the pot still whiskey. So we'll talk about the three different sources. But this is, I wanted to be able to use Canadian barley because it's got bigger flavours. It's not been designed for high starch, high alcohol, the way Scottish distiller's malt is. Canadian barley is designed for beer, and your audience will know that you got to have the best ingredients for great craft beer. Canadian barley, more flavour, less alcohol, but more flavour.
Cool.
So if I'm using Canadian barley, I can't get it pre-smoked, so I have to smoke it myself.
Ah, okay.
Went back to Islay and studied traditional peat smoking methods at Laphroaig, Bowmore, Kilchoman. And with an engineer's mindset, I realised that I can't do the germination step. It's a floor malting is way too much energy, too much manpower, too variable. So doing a traditional floor malting like you see it, Kilchoman, Laphroaig, Highland Park, too much work, too much inconsistency.
Yes.
So what I decided to do was buy malted barley and then wet it. Once you wet it, then you can smoke it.
Yeah.
That way I control the whole process really tightly. So this unit here then, you'll know that Laphroaig would process 7 metric tons at a time. This unit here, you can smell it, processes 2 metric tons. So this is quite a large scale. It's the largest commercial scale peat smoker outside of Scotland. And there's only a couple in Scotland that do peat smoking, right? As you know, just a handful. So the idea here is we load it up with 2 tons of Canadian malted barley, soak it, drain the water off, and then we smoke it using local peat that we can talk about later.
Oh, interesting.
Because we have a whole terroir project built around different sources of peat.
Cool.
So this gives us control. 30-hour process, very, very similar to Laphroaig's process.
Yeah.
It's a cold smoking. The fire around here, this is the peat fire. It's just a little bit smaller than Laphroaig's peat fire. But
smells really good.
Yeah, you should be able to put your hand above the fire and not burn your hand at Laphroaig or at Macaloneys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically that also means the peated version, the peated whiskey of you is not peated Scottish malt, which usually in the world, if you buy a peated whiskey, it will be peated malt from Port Ellen or anywhere in the Highlands, basically. So your peat is Canadian peat. Yeah,
well, we'll talk about the peat sources later.
Yes.
Because there's a whole terroir from different terroirs around the world.
Yeah.
I have American peat, Canadian peat, Scottish peat.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
I love that.
And so, but yes, it's Canadian barley. Yeah. In fact, here's this actually is this is some of the Islay peat. You can see it's traditionally cut. Normally it would be about this length, right? And this was cut on the island of Islay in Scotland and then imported to Canada. So you burn the peat here. The fan pulls the smoke and blows the smoke underneath the barley bed. About 30 hours of cold smoking. You get up to 54 parts per million, 54 ppm.
Okay.
So it's a very high spec.
Yeah.
Allowing for octomore as an extreme. So that's the start of the process with the barley sources, if you will. We're going to go into the mill room now. And here you can see actually we've got 2 different mills. This is what you would typically see in a craft brewery or a Scottish distillery. It's a 4-roller mill. And we run this identically to the way the Scots would. Same settings to get that ratio of flour to grits to husks, right? We run it identical to a traditional Scotch method. But we have a second mill. And this is because that we're doing the Irish style of whiskey called triple distilled pot still whiskey.
Okay.
Triple distilled pot still whiskey uses between 60% and 90% of farmer's barley, unmalted barley. Mm-hmm. Farmer's barley will not mill very well in a roller mill. So with the farmer's barley, we put it in this hammer mill, and the hammer mill essentially has this sieve with a hammer flailing around inside.
Okay.
And it batters the crap out of the barley, okay? And it creates a lot of flour, right? But, and so that's for the triple distilled pot still whiskey method for the unmalted barley, and this is for the malted barley.
Cool.
So what you've got here then is you've got the mash tun, semi-lauter mash tun with 2 hot liquor tanks, okay, for making the whiskey wash. And this still follows the traditional Scottish method. We have applied best practices, but this still is the original Scottish method to this point. Mm-hmm. We mill the same and we mash the same. So in Scotland, I don't know if you can see in there, you'll see that there's a false bed, and then there's some rakes that rotate very slowly. And so what happens is, traditional Scotch method, we don't change it. We add the grist, the milled barley.
Yeah.
We do 1.5 tons per batch, so 1,500 kilograms. We hit it with 3 waters, successively hotter, just like they do in Scotland. First water, you'll remove the enzymes without denaturing them, and a little bit of sugar, a little bit of starch. Second water, hotter, breaks the starch granules down, dissolves them, and then we transfer those 2 waters to the fermenter or washback. The third water is the Scots being cheap, because the third water we don't use in this batch. That third water is really hot, and it's to break down the last very little amount of starch that might be left, because the Scots will not like to waste any starch whatsoever. That third water goes into the hot liquor tank, and we use that for the next batch coming along. So waters 1 and 2 go to the fermenters behind me, and water 3 goes into the hot liquor tank to become the first water on the next batch.
So classic, like in Scotland, basically.
Yeah, identical to the way the Scots do it. So this is where we start to differ in terms of best practices from Scotland. Mm-hmm. So in Scotland, most commonly, they will do 1 yeast. Most commonly it's M1 or mother 1, M for mother. And that's high alcohol tolerance, and most people use that. We use it also, but we add a second yeast. It's a proprietary yeast. I can't tell you exactly the name of the yeast. It's a secret. But that second yeast we choose because it ferments natural oils. Mm-hmm. So when you taste our whiskies, you're going to have a creamy, velvety mouthfeel, lots of legs in the glass, because we're building at the fermentation stage, we're building in natural oils. The other difference here in terms of best practices from Scotland is in Scotland they'll typically be in the fermenter or washback for 2 days. We take a whole extra day. Now that fermentation is finished after about 1.5 days, mm-hmm. So the extra day and a half is conditioning, just like beer conditions, okay? So with a conditioning process, now you're going to really round off the flavors, build up the fruity esters. And so going instead of 2 days to 3 days, it means more equipment, more time, but better quality wash for us to distill with. So this is one of the best practices that Jim Swan brought, is a second yeast and 50% longer in the washback or fermenter.
Lovely.
So here we have the wash still, the spirit still, and the spirit safe. You'll see here that they're actually made in Forsyth, by Forsyth in Speyside in Scotland. Roughly half the Scotch industry uses Forsyth pot stills. The other half is called Diageo, and they just make their own. Irish distillers, the Jamesons, Redbreast, etc., they use Forsyths as well. This wash still is 5,000 litre wash still, about 5,500 litres. And then the spirit still is 3,650. So looking at these, they look similar in scale to the most Scotch distilleries. Talking about best practices brought over from Scotland by Jim Swan, Jim worked in what's now called the Scotch Whisky Research Institute. And that was internally funded by the Scotch industry. That meant he went to every Scotch distillery across the whole country. And with a PhD chemist's mindset, he was watching what he thought might be best practices at all the different distilleries and how they changed or informed the spirit quality. Then when he went independent as a consultant, he brought those best practices together, tried them out with a few other distilleries, independent distilleries. We were his second last project. So Jim was at the peak of his career when he came here. And so some of the switch up to Scotch best practices, still a traditional method, is that we take about 50% longer in both of these pot stills. That means that the volatiles, your fruity esters, etc., the alcohol, they're rising much slower than normal, 50% slower, and that gives us a lot more copper contact. More copper contact gives you super fruitiness. That's a house style for our whiskies. Every one of our whiskies, super fruity. Also makes the spirit more refined or smoother. When I say smooth as a Scotsman, I mean the opposite of hot and spicy. It's smooth and creamy, right? And so that's a critical role for the copper, is to make this spirit nice and smooth and refined, but to build up the fruity esters. Okay. So 50% longer. We distill all of the alcohol out of this pot. That's traditional. And then when we're ready, we'll transfer that low wines, right? So the distillate from the wash still is called low wines. It might be up about 28 or 30% alcohol. From the fermenter, it came in about 8% alcohol. Then we distill it up to 28, 30%. We charge that low wines into the spirit still, but then we also charge back the foreshots and feints from the previous batch. So this will be up closer to 40% alcohol before we start distilling. When the spirit comes off the top, we're starting up at maybe 74%. If it's double distilled single malt. If we're doing triple distilled pot still whiskey, we do a third distillation in this pot, and it will be coming off at 84% alcohol. Very high. But a key step when we're doing the spirit still is the spirit safe and the cuts that you do. And so for the first 10 minutes or so, we will send the foreshots to recycle. What we're really doing is we're cleaning out the pipework from the heavy oils and big leathery tobacco flavors that are too dominant. That first 10 minutes you're cleaning the pipework. It's beautiful spirit, but we send it to recycle to the foreshots. After about 10 minutes, then we collect the hearts. We switch over and we collect the hearts. And we'll run that for a few hours. I'm not going to tell you how many hours, but I'll express it in terms of percentage, because that's how people measure the cut. So an average cut in Scotland that Diageo typically would do, the spirit will start to collect up about 72, 73%. We start collecting. But once Diageo get down to about 65% alcohol, then they cut. Okay, so they only collect from about 73 down to 65. If you're on Islay, a much wider cut. You go all the way down to 60% or 58%. At Macaloneys, we do, according to Jim Swan, the narrowest cut in the entire Scotch industry. So that means then that when we start collecting at 73%, 74%, we stop collecting at a secret percentage. Now, to give you an idea, Macallan in Scotland claim to have the narrowest cut in Scotland, and they stopped collecting at about 69%, right? So 73, 74 down to 69. That's the narrowest cut in Scotland. Jim Swan says we have the narrowest cut, right? That means I'm collecting only the lightest, fruitiest volatiles are being concentrated, right? And that's one of the big contributions to our gold medal whiskies.
Have you ever tried to create a second type of new make, to make a different version of your whiskey?
So as a scientist, you know, you're as a master whiskey maker, you're always tempted to try other experiments. Yeah. But as an industrial engineer, I know that if I want to make consistently high quality product, I have to lock down the variables and not change things all the time. Yeah. And so where I choose to change things is the 3 spirit types of triple distilled, pot still, single malt, PD single malt, and then with a very active wood program, we have a great selection of casks. I don't play with different yeasts, I don't play with different cuts. Yeah. I just focus on where I think the quality can be brought in. Perfect.
So let's have a look at the casks.
Yep.
Or do you want to add something that we haven't mentioned yet?
Something that might interest your viewers is the colour difference here and what insights that gives you into how the pots are run. What you'll notice then is the pot here has a bronze colour, but it's got a lacquer on it, right? A shiny lacquer that darkened to a bronze colour because originally all of this copper was that colour, okay? But when this got hot, the colour darkened. That tells you and your viewers that this stayed cold. This has never ever gotten hot. And that tells you we're running a really good process because we've got the hot vapors rising up the neck over the line arm, and when it comes into the condenser, it never gets hot. Okay. If this changes colour, you go into another distillery and that has changed colour, you know they're running a hot process, which means the spirit will probably be spicy and hot. Okay. So that's a little inside distiller scoop. Yeah. This is the bottled inventory room.
Ooh. Hello there.
But through here is where we keep most of our casks. So be prepared to take a deep breath because there's lots of angel share in here.
Oh. I wish I could put that on camera.
Yeah, I know.
That smell.
Exactly.
Now, fantastic.
So there's 2 main rooms. We have about 1,200 casks, and this is a good area to kind of summarize the cask types. Wood management is an absolute critical issue for top quality distillers. And we're very fortunate that thanks to Jim Swan, I got introduced to some of the best cooperages and bodegas around the world. So my sherry wood comes not just from Jerez in Spain, but it's the same supplier who supply Macallan, Glendronach, etc., Glenfarclas, etc. So here in Canada, I'm getting the absolute best sherry wood that money can buy. But to my mind, as a master whiskey maker, and if you don't mind me saying, you know, this year at the World Whisky Awards, I won Master Distiller of the Year for craft distillers. Right?
Wow! Congratulations!
Thank you, thank you. I won the same in Canada, right? But the World Whisky Awards for Scotland and Japan, and everyone's competing. That's the ultimate accolade. And so for me, to be able to win World's Best and now 23 gold medals for 23 different whiskies at the World Whisky Awards, the wood management is critical. The wood ratio, in my opinion, is very important. The wood ratio to spirit. And so I do not like to work with little firkin casks. There's too much wood, it gets over oaked. Yes, we use a lot of first use bourbon wood. And of course, the joke in Scotland and Ireland and here at Macaloneys is we let the Americans make their the rubbish bourbon whiskey that's in your face with all the oak notes and huge vanilla, just to condition the wood for us to use, right? So God bless the Americans, right? They can condition the wood for us, and then we make better whiskey. So yes, and as a whiskey maker, when I'm designing a new whiskey expression, I will usually start off with a bourbon cask as my base, because that presents the house style, unadulterated, unchanged. There's no wine influence, there's no bourbon influence, it's the pure oak and our spirit coming together. So I like to start designing whiskies with the bourbon cask, but then you'll see and a bourbon cask is typically 195 litres, but then a lot of my wood is a European barrique, right? Mm-hmm. And the wine barriques are 225 litres. So I'll have, I've got from Jerez, I've got, Pedro Jimenez, Oloroso, Amontillado, etc. From Portugal, I've got Portuguese red wine, I've got Moscatel. I also source other wines like Sauternes from France and Recioto, sweet Italian red wine. So I have a lot of fun with the different wine casks. Yeah. I also have some, this isn't specifically it, but I have some, I work quite a lot with virgin American oak as well, but in small quantities because you don't want it to dominate the balance of the flavour profile. So I will work quite a lot with the virgin wood. The virgin, this might be a generalisation, my sense is Germans love peaty whiskey. Oh, yeah. And what I found is with the peaty whiskey, with those bold flavours, I can bring in more virgin wood to balance the flavours. Whereas if I'm working with an Irish style, triple distilled, or I'm working with a classic single malt with no peat, I have to use the virgin wood very, very sparingly, right? So it's all about creating balance of flavours. So now the beauty, here's a lovely side story about the sherry barriques now, right? So same supplier, like I said, for Macallan, Glendronach and Macaloney. He has multiple warehouses with tens of thousands of Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez, Amontillado, barriques, all maturing. Only for the Scotch-Irish industry, not to be bottled as sherry. None of it gets bottled as sherry. Tens of thousands of casks. What does he do with that sherry? I asked him, and he walked me across the road to another building where he has a whole fermentation plant fermenting sherry vinegar. So the modern sherry industry is here to service the whiskey industry. Yes. And the byproduct now is sherry vinegar, not bottled sherry. Yes. And most of the sherry wood is actually American white oak, Quercus alba, right? And so where I really love these butts is these are Spanish oak, right? Yeah. That bring in more spices, more tannins, right? So I have mostly American white oak, but I do have the occasional French or Spanish oak as well. But they bring much bolder, bigger flavours, a lot more tannins, more acidity, and bigger spices. So you've got to work carefully with those types of woods. Right, so I mentioned the shave toast rechar method that Dr. Jim Swan invented. Yeah. This would be a regular stave from an American standard cask or even a European barrique. And you can see that it's about maybe 14 millimeters thick. It's got a crocodile char. And this is how all of the wood was treated up until Jim Swan invented shave toast rechar. The wood would be toasted and charred, filled with wine or bourbon, and then given to the Scotch industry or Macaloneys to then use. But Jim came up with this shave toast rechar method, and what he did was he brought that cask back to the cooperage after it had been filled with wine or filled with bourbon, and then he shaved a few millimeters, so you can see this is much, much thinner. Yeah, side by side, it's much, much thinner, right? And then he re-toasted this and then recharred it, again a crocodile or alligator char, right? And by doing that, he accomplished a couple of critical steps. This stave would still have wine soaked into the wood, and so when he toasts the cask, he's cooking the wine. So his first ever cask, the Chateau Richard Portuguese red wine, that Portuguese red wine probably was quite a dry, acidic red wine, which personally, as a whiskey maker, I don't think works with whiskey, the dry, acidic wines. It's the sweet wines that are perfect for whiskey. But when he toasts this dry, acidic Portuguese red wine with this second Chateau Richard, he cooks the wine in the wood and it caramelizes the wine. So anytime you taste a Chateau Richard cask, you'll always get a little bit more caramel. You'll still have the wine or the sherry notes there, or the tawny port, right? I also work with Chateau Richard bourbon as well. But the retoasting will create an extra natural caramel sweetness. Sometimes it presents as caramel, butterscotch, toffee, etc. But the other key thing is, because this is so much thinner than the original cask, angel share is much, much larger in a Chateau Richard. Because angel share is limited by diffusion of the alcohol and water through the wood. It's not leaking, it's diffusing through that wood. If it's got a shorter path, the angel share is higher. So in Scotland, with this traditional cask, 2% angel share. That means you might lose a third of the cask after 10, 15 years with 2% angel share. Right, that's in Scotland. Third of the cask after 10, 15 years, 2% angel share. With this, in my Victoria climate, and when you drive around, you'll see the grass is starting to turn brown because we're getting into the dry, hot summer. And so we have dry, hot summers here in Victoria, and I have thinner staves. My angel share is 7 or 8% angel share. That means I lose a third of the cask, not in 12 or 15 years. I lose a third of my cask in 3 or 4 years.
Jesus.
That's critical to my gold medal awards. Because as Jim Swan said, the angel share is the quid pro quo, what you give and take for deep maturation. And Jim didn't explain this, but as a biochemical engineer and a fermentation scientist, what's happening is, with that angel share, how does it contribute to deep maturation? Well, what's happening is when the alcohol and water leave, in comes air. In my case, it's island air, so we have a maritime house style, right? You'll taste that in the whiskies later. But when it brings in air, it's bringing in 21% oxygen. Oxygen is one of the most dangerous reactive chemicals on the planet. As pure oxygen, it can explode, right? But even 21% oxygen creates this chemical cocktail, this massive experiment in there with 600 or 800 flavors now interacting with oxygen. And that's what you call deep oxidative maturation. Now, in Scotland, or Japan, it takes them 12, 15 years to get that deep oxidative maturation. With my whiskey, I'm getting the same deep oxidative maturation and therefore the same high quality of complexity in just 3 or 4 years. So my world's best from the World Whisky Awards, Kildara, triple pot still, it took on in blind tastings a 27-year-old, a 21-year-old, and it won world's best when it was only 4 years old.
Wow.
And crazy. It's explained by the angel share quid pro quo.
Yeah, that concludes our tour of Macaloneys Distillery. Graeme, thank you so much for having me here and showing us around.
Well, thank you for your passion and coming all the way to Canada.
And hopefully you get the chance to try some Macaloneys wherever you are in the world, obviously. I know that we have it in Germany. Depending on where you are in the world, definitely try it. I'll have a sip now. And hopefully I can give you some reviews afterwards on the channel. Yeah, thanks again. Great tour. Love the distillery, and Yeah, I've already tried your whiskey, so I can say it's a really good whiskey.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
See you next time down the road.